Should people be worried that the Cowichan tribe's land rights case is the end of property rights as we know it in BC, like some conservative leaders say? Or is this all just a bunch of fear-mongering, as some Indigenous leaders contend? Here's where things stand. A BC court decision released this summer says the Cowichan Nation has a right to land in Richmond once used as a fishing village. These rights extend to both public land and private property, according to the judge. But while the decision basically grants the nation title over the public portion, the judge says the private lots simply must be reconciled in some way. Now, courts have never forced private land to be turned over to a First Nation in one of these suits. And that's not exactly what this decision orders. But what it does say should happen with the land is somewhat unclear and open to interpretation. But the city of Richmond still decided to send out a notice to the owners of the area lots and invite them to a public meeting to learn about the decision, warning that it could negatively impact their property rights. Of course, this turned into a bit of a media circus. All the while, Premier David Eby has been saying the province is appealing the decision.
I hope that we're able to reach resolution through the court process of the injustice that was done to the Cowichan people, and at the same time ensure that we have clarity and protection of private property rights in the province. This is a challenge, but it's certainly not impossible.
Part of this appeal rests on complaints that these property owners were not properly notified. It could go all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada. The latest is that BC has filed for a stay of the decision while this appeal is being heard, a process that could take years. Here's Premier David Eby from the recent First Nation Leaders Gathering.
I want to be absolutely clear. As of today, it is not in question in the least that people own their properties in Richmond. We have not heard from any of the banks that they are refusing financing to individuals. In fact, we've heard already from one bank that the opposite is true. They haven't changed any policies related to lending in the area.
Well, Eby strikes a bit of a conciliatory tone here. He still seems to be fanning the flames with comments like these because he keeps saying the government must protect private property rights, suggesting those are somehow compromised by the decision. But he did seek to quash the notion that banks are refusing financing. Meanwhile, the Cowichan Nation and Indigenous leaders keep trying to point out that the suit was never about taking private property away or turfing people off their land. They argue that they just want the government to compensate them for land unjustly taken more than a century ago. Here's Chief Shanna Thomas of the First Nations Summit.
So I think that we need to start looking at Aboriginal title in a different context, and we need to start thinking about reconciling that title rather than going to the extreme thinking process of displacement and all of the things that can trigger for folks.
The eruption and worry surrounding this case shows that if nothing else, Eby's government will continue to be forced to walk a difficult tightrope on land rights versus reconciliation. Keep up with the latest at todayinbc.com. I'm Mark Page, BC Legislative Correspondent for Black Press Media.